Hello and welcome to a special edition of the In the Money Players podcast. I talk about special editions all the time, and I do believe that a lot of the shows are special, but none more so than this one because as life was getting in the way, sort of missed the fact that back in November, I guess it would have been, we passed the 10-year mark for the Players podcast brand. Of course, it started off with our friends over there at the affectionately known Place with the Letters, DRF Daily Racing Form. For the last now 6 years, we've been on our own, and it's actually the real anniversary of that. I think the first show was around December 23rd. Here to celebrate that today with two men without whom there would be no Players podcast. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you in the Brooklyn bunker. Once again, shout out to everybody watching also on the In the Money Media YouTube channel. We encourage you to subscribe over there, click that notification bell, do all those fun things, as well as giving us your opinions on the 6 races at this loaded Santa Anita card we're going to get to in a minute. But first, let's bring in the team, those aforementioned two men, starting with a guy who was with me for that very first show. We've had the pleasure of working together on and off throughout that next decade, not as often as I'd like, but always a pleasure to have, along with a special guest of his own, our special guest, Matt Bernier from TVG FanDuel. How are you, my friend?
I'm hanging in there, Pete. Jonathan, good to see you again. 10 years. It doesn't seem like it's been 10 years. It's gone by in the blink of an eye, and life has changed for all three of us in many, many ways. I had a kid, and then we thought we'd do it again. So this is the only way that Mackenzie will sleep right now. She's going to be 7 weeks on Thursday of this week, so she kind of runs the show around here right now. So
wait, hold on. I didn't know this. Did you name her Mackenzie before or after Chancellor McPatrick and the Jorge Brady filly?
we have an A in there. We don't go right MC. We slid an A in there. So and there's no capital K. So no, it's just been, I think it's, you guys both have kids, and anybody else that's had a child, you look back on those early days very fondly, but then at the same time, when you're in them, you're looking around like, what, your world is turned upside down. I think of Clark Griswold right now in Christmas Vacation. Hallelujah, holy shit, where's the Tylenol? I mean, that's me once a day, if not more times. So it's good though. We're happy. Everybody's healthy, and looking forward to shooting the breeze with you guys for a little bit.
Have you, be honest, Matt, have you called Gainesway yet to try to get a sponsorship?
No, I haven't thought about that, honestly. For the longest time, I had workshops, Colette's bets with my older daughter, and now I've got to work on a sponsorship deal with this one. Maybe she can be front and center for one of their leading stallions.
I can see the ad now. The other voice you hear, of course, a man who's been with us. Gosh, he was with the Place with the Letters brand from like year 3. So it's been, 7, 8 years. Sometimes it feels like longer. Jonathan Kitchen, what's up, JK?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about it. I remember the first day you guys had me on as an unofficial, just a guest, and I remember being so excited and so nervous, like pacing around the kitchen, like hoping I sound good on the phone. I was handicapped to the gills. I mean, I probably looked at those races for an hour each, and that was a lot of fun, and a few changes. Obviously, we miss Matt from being around and being able to do it, but it's always been fun. It's been a great way to kind of get a little bit more entrenched in the game for all of us, right? I mean, it's like we were all involved, but like the Players podcast really thrust us all the way into the game.
Yeah, we went, and it is interesting to see that the sort of evolution from, it started off really like pure, I'd say, informed outsiders, and then you just you go to all these events, you look at so many races, you end up meeting all these people, and it's just been great to get that support of the industry that's allowed us to do what we've been doing now. Matt, we got to get a little bit, we've got your personal life update, which is great. As I remember in the earliest days of the podcast, half the shows were making fun of how young you were, and now seeing you in full grown-ass manitude, it's a beautiful thing. But how about a professional life update? I mean, I know a lot of people watching know, but some might not know where to find you these days and get a little sense of what your schedule looks like, if you even know what your schedule looks like right now for 2025.
I do. FanDuel TV is going to pick up again here. My first shift back will be January 2nd. I'll do about 7 of them here from home, and then I'll hit the road. Last year, we were fortunate enough to just kind of set up shop down at Gulfstream for the winter. We would have loved to have done that again this time around, but it's just not feasible with one in daycare and then this one being what she is, although she'd probably be easier to two. So I'm going to be doing the Triple Crown Trail again, like I did the first year with FanDuel. I'm going to go down to the fairgrounds, I think 3 times. I'll go down to Gulfstream 5 or 6 times, Tampa Bay Downs, head down to Colonial for the Virginia Derby, and then we'll wrap things up. I have one Oaklawn trip in there, and then we'll wrap up with our usual Keeneland run in April. So right into the first weekend, first Saturday in May. So at Churchill Downs, it's one of those things that it feels like forever to get to the build up, and then granted, the flying back and forth is it is what it is. I'm not going to go too deep, but yeah, it's a lot.
Airline of choice?
Well, at this point, I'm bordering on like uranium status with American, so like I'm pot committed. I'm all in.
Yeah,
There's no way that I can shop around a little bit, but not much. So yeah, it'll be fun to get back around and check out all the sort of preps leading into the Derby this year, like I did the first time through. I do love Gulfstream. Gulfstream's almost become like a home away from home for me, so I'm looking forward to getting back down there. But yeah, this year is going to be a lot more travel early on, and looking forward to getting on the road again. I don't know how the hell it's going to work here with me not being here for half the week, but we'll cross that bridge when the time comes.
You might get a stressed out phone call or two. I'm going to predict you might get a stressed out phone call or two.
Stressed out would be a win. I'm afraid it's going to be worse than that.
JK, how about you? You had last weekend off with Naira. I think you did anyway, with Naira not running. But what's going on? What does your schedule look like early in 25? Where can folks find you?
No, I was there. I took the train. I flew Friday to go Thursday night to Austin, picked up Austin, the Human, came back to the city on Friday. We got in late Friday. Saturday morning, I was on the train to Aqueduct because the studio's obviously there. We did Tampa and Oaklawn. I did Tampa and Oaklawn yesterday. This is a kind of a funny thing. I go down from Saratoga on Friday, this coming Friday. I drive down from Saratoga straight into Talking Horses. Then I'm on track. Immediately after I get off air, me and Austin go to the airport, fly to Austin. I take him home. And then Saturday morning, I fly back to JFK, come back to Aqueduct, work Saturday and Sunday. So I'm in full. I feel you, Matt, on Executive Platinum. I do have this isn't the airing of the grievances thing, but I'm a little mad at American by offering everyone to pay for cheap upgrades, which now makes my Executive Platinum status not nearly as cool. But I'll email them about that. And then it's the same schedule. Yes, same schedule for me. Basically. The weekends I'm in the city, I'll be on track. The weekends I'm in Austin, I'll be remote with my little live view kit. And, probably the same deal. Friday, Saturday, Sundays, a majority of the way. And I'll probably leave the trips to Oaklawn for others, as much travel as I have. I think probably Laffit will go a few times. Richie, Maggie, and Paul's already there. And then I guess the only real difference for my year this year is going to be, we're going to have the Belmont up there again, which that'll be normal like last year. And I'm assuming we'll still be on Fox for that big race. And then just starting early for Saratoga is going to be a little tricky, starting wild. For the, being there for the 4th of July and then being there, basically staying in a whole extra week. So everything else will be the same for me.
It's going to be fun. We're going to have a lot of the stuff we've talked about covered, especially got this new deal with Gulfstream and Santa Anita. Going to have more coverage of those 2 tracks on the In the Money Media Network than ever before. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're going to have special shows. Should be an absolute blast. And then I'm very happy to tell you guys my travel plans for the first quarter of the year. None. I'm basically going to be here. Small chance I'll get down to the Pegasus if I need to. And I love that event. But I'm just looking forward after years of travel to have a few months to just enjoy being here in, the belly of the beast, New York City. And the FOMO might get the better of me. Maybe there'll be a Cheltenham trip, but I'm kind of hoping my next trip is the Derby. But we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out.
I have to fly. I pay $50 a month for in-flight American Airlines Wi-Fi, and if I'm not flying, it's going to waste.
Now, people are crazy when I tell them, and I don't mean this in sort of, again, it's sort of a spoiled position to be in, But if I were just purely playing the races on any given day, I'd rather be in my office with all my screens, all my stuff where I like it to be. So I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Doesn't mean that I don't love being at the track and doing everything there. But I think it's just, it's a I don't want to say a level of comfort, but like if I need to do a last second thing, if there's a replay that I haven't watched, or banking on public Wi-Fi is not the greatest thing in the world either. So if I know what I've got here, if I was just diehard or playing in a contest or something, I think the bunker downstairs would be where I'd want to be.
Something to be said for being in the war room. I'll be on TV on Thursday for Sky Sports Racing, either here from the comfort of the bunker or probably out at my mom's, my dad's old office on Long Island, one of my favorite places to broadcast from. That's going to be fun. I'm going to do write-ups. Every race we talk about in this show, I'm going to do a horse-by-horse write-up of, which you can find on either attheraces.com or inthemoneypodcast.com. We'll cover that all on social, etc. as well. But before I finalize those write-ups, I need to hear what these guys think. We're going to start off with race number 6 on Thursday, Boxing Day. 4:30 Eastern is the scheduled post time for the newly minted Grade 2 Laffit Pincay Junior Stakes. Very happy to see Laffit getting a race named after him. Well-deserved honor. It's a field of 8 for this Grade 2. Matt Bernier, we'll start with you and your thoughts on this one. What's going to be your approach in the Laffit Pincay?
First, I want to give the caveat. This is me coming off the layoff, and I haven't watched I haven't watched much racing over the past 2 months, if I'm being brutally honest, and I haven't watched any replays. So this is just paper dope for me.
That's okay.
When you take a look at the field, this is kind of a nondescript group, and it wouldn't surprise me if it ended up just being whoever makes the front doesn't stop, and it's kind of a merry-go-round. In that case, I've never loved him. He didn't like to win a ton, but Tarantino, I think, has as good a chance as anyone on the numbers that are available commercially. He's arguably the fastest in the field. I think you put him right on the chooch, and somebody runs him down, somebody runs him down. But I think if he can clear to the front as they hit the backside, I think he's going to be tough to run down.
I agree. So I'll just go ahead and chime in. Tarantino is who I'm going to pick in this spot because I do think he's got the best numbers and a potential pace advantage in a race where there's other speed, but I don't think the speed is as good as he is. Very simple. And also just from a betting strategy point of view, I never mind having a single in the first leg of the pick 6. If this goes wrong, we'll come back and play the pick 5. JK, when it comes to the Laffit Pincay Stakes on Thursday, can we make it a chorus for Tarantino?
Yeah, well, before I jump into that, I got 3 important thoughts I got to get out before I tell you who I like in here. In fact, I'll just start with who I like in here. I'm just going to use 2, 6, 7, try to get away with it. None of them stand out to me. I'll use those 3. Laffit Pincay Junior Stakes, that's exciting to me. I think it's amazing, and I think that I'm hoping that as a home team New York guy, someone somewhere is paying attention and realizes and recognizes that it is an absolute travesty that there is not an Angel Cordero Stakes in New York, and it needs to change, and it needs to change as quickly as possible. The second thing is opening day at Santa Anita is I get reminded every year it's one of the most special days in my entire life because it was an opportunity for me to take my dad to Santa Anita for the first time and to walk on that apron. We talk about walking on the apron and seeing those mountains, and I was able to do that with my father on opening day on a number of occasions, and it will always have that extremely special place for me because of that. And like I said, in this race, I don't have that strong of opinion. I got a couple singles later, so we'll just try to stay alive here, 2, 6, 7.
Fair enough. It's one of the racing days, maybe the only racing day in America at this point that I'm really, really desperate to go to that I've never gone to. I've been fortunate to go to so many of the big ones. I've never made it out there for the Boxing Day opening day, but I love that idea, and I'm so glad that you and your dad got to share that. JK, let's pivot to race number 7. Speaking of those mountains, the San Gabriel Mountains, we're now up to the San Gabriel Stakes, going 1 mile and 1/8 on the turf. Field of 9 going postward here. JK, we'll keep it with you. Are you with Johannes or against him?
We talked about the history of the Players Podcast. One thing that's always been something we've done, or at least I've done, I'll take all the blame for this, is I've always used California turf horses as punchlines more than I have as picks. In Johannes, I made fun of very much so privately and publicly going into the Breeders' Cup Mile, and he ran outstanding. He is without a doubt the best California turf horse in the last 10 years, if not like recently, of course. I'm going to be ice cold in here with him. These other horses, if there's an East Coast shipper, I would think about it that kind of grabbed my attention, but there's nothing that does. I'm going to be ice cold to Johannes here.
How about you, Matt? Are you a big believer in Johannes as well?
I am. I was actually going to say something similar where I was going through when I saw his name pop up here and think about who was the last great turf horse in California. And I couldn't really think of one. And I liked him in the mile. Granted, that was after Diego Velasquez was out, but it's neither here nor there. But point being, I thought he, at the very least, even in defeat, I thought he kind of solidified that argument that he's not just another California grass horse, that he's actually truly an elite runner here in North America, but he acquitted himself really well against, Guinea's winner and some other really quality European runners. So the distance doesn't bother me. He's perfect at Santa Anita. I'm usually a little bit skeptical of the horses coming out of the Breeders' Cup with their next start. This is a little bit different simply because a lot of those runners that I'm usually against, they wheel them back at the end of November, whether it's the Cigar in New York or they run them at Churchill in those 2-year-old races. And usually I think it's, the Breeders' Cup's taking the starch out of them. We're looking at the better part of 2 months now. I don't think that's an excuse at this point. I think he towers over this field. He should win.
I have nothing against him. He's going to be on every single ticket, but I'm going to be too cute, or I'm going to be cute, maybe too cute by half, and take a little bit of a shot with a horse that I think has just better than the last couple of running lines. I'm intrigued by number 9 Seal Team in this spot. That race in the Seabiscuit is the kind of race that I like to bet, where the horse makes this premature move into a fast pace. I think a lot of people are going to see it and think he was, found out in terms of class or distance. I don't think so. I think it was just an ill-timed ride. I'm intrigued by the switch to Pratt. I love Johannes. I think he's excellent, but I will definitely have some exactas with the 9, and I'll definitely have some Seal Team on top in my horizontals as well, but certainly not going to get knocked out of it by Johannes, who really has shown what a top class individual he is, and probably just takes this race by the scruff of the neck. But I'd be remiss in not mentioning I do have some affection to the point where I'm going to make him the top pick for Seal Team. Let's get to the grade 1 action in the form of the Malibu. Interesting race here in that it pulls together all kinds of wild form lines, including those of the U.S. Triple Crown Series. Mystic Dan making his reappearance at the races. Hasn't been seen since those Triple Crown runs. Is not going to be easy, though, when you got the likes of Ben Tornado. Speaking of those Breeders' Cup, potential Breeders' Cup hangover horses coming back in this spot. Matt, we'll send it back to you. Is Ben Tornado an ex-Breeders' Cup horse from this year you could see getting involved with, or is this one you're a little bit more skeptical of? And what do we make of our Derby winner?
Yeah, initially I thought when I saw Ben Tornado's name come up, knowing that Mystic Dan would be in here and a couple other runners, I said, well, I like the horse that this is what his game is. He's a sprinter. 7/8 shouldn't be an issue for him. Thought he ran really well at Del Mar. But then you look at it a little bit more, and maybe I'm overthinking things. Pilot Commander's not slow. There's some other horses in here that are legitimately quick early on. So for an 8-horse field, I think this could be a pretty spirited pace. And then that brings in the horses from off the pace a little bit. Winterfell, I have no idea what to do with, because the East Coast form versus the West Coast form is night and day. And that's saying something, because Baffert had him on the West Coast and he was just fine. And then he got to Maryland and he turned into, a horse that could win this race. If you tell me he's going to continue on that form, he's in with a chance. I don't necessarily want to find out. The 2 horses that I kind of kept going back to were Stronghold, the 7, who needs to improve, but I do like those turnbacks that are good at that mile and the 16th mile and an 8th distance. And then the Derby winner. And I guess 2 questions. Is he fast enough to maintain contact early, or is he completely outrun and maybe he clunks up for a piece? It's a good stepping stone to whatever's next. But then on top of that, and this really has no bearing on betting this race, I was going through thinking about the Eclipse voting. Does a Derby Malibu combination, if he were to win this race, trump the classic Bluegrass, the Travers Florida Derby? Because I'm having a hard time separating the other 2, Sierra Leone and Fierceness. But if Mystic Dan wins the Malibu, I don't know. Suddenly I'm like, do I just default and go to a horse like this?
It's an interesting question. We yapped about this a little bit with Jay Privman on our Eclipse show. Ultimately, where he and I landed was that while in some years that might make the difference, the fact that he wouldn't have won outside of 3-year-old company, for me, I'd be very comfortable putting him third to those other 2 on my ballot, but I couldn't sneak him past either one. That was my 2 cents on the Mystic Dan question. In terms of where he's going to be positioned, yeah, I took the view that both Stronghold and Mystic Dan are going to be maybe a little bit pace compromised here, maybe a little bit thinking of things down the line, and that Ben Tornado, in fact, is the horse that looks the sharpest and most well meant to win today. We'll need to work out a trip from down there at the rail, but I think he's got the speed to do so. He really, to me, looks like a horse who's going to get a grade 1 maybe as soon as Thursday. I went with Ben Tornado just thinking I'll try the best speed, and hopefully he can just work out the trip. And hopefully also he'll be a bettable type of number at around 3-1 with the likes of Mystic Dan in here taking other cash. JK, both questions. Do you see Mystic Dan with a win here, potentially as a contender for the 3-year-old championship? What do you think of his chances and all the rest in the Malibu?
No, I don't like him in here. In fact, I think the sequence is becomes extremely playable because I'm against Ben Tornado and him, right? And Ben Tornado's going to be overbet off of that second place in the Breeders' Cup. Well, I mean, he ran well, don't get me wrong. And Mystic Dan's going to be overbet because he's Mystic Dan. He won the Kentucky Derby, and any horse that wins the Derby or even runs in the Derby, hits the board in the Derby, it runs in a Triple Crown race in general is overbet for the rest of their lives. To me, so the Eclipse question. The only horse in which winning the Malibu could move the voting for me would be Fierceness, because he's so closely, in my opinion, behind Sierra Leone. If he were to pull a Malibu, that would push him in front of Sierra Leone. But I think it's Sierra Leone. I mean, I think a second in the Derby, a classic, and Bluegrass is enough for me. To me, this feels like, I think Kenny McPeak does a great job. I think that he's aggressive. I think he places horses and he runs his horses, and I commend him for that. This feels like a bridge to get to a race in the desert. He's ready. Let's give him a start. Let's get him in a cool grade 1. Let's ship him out there. Let's take a shot with him. It's a great comeback race. He won sprinting before, but that was against lesser. Like, this is a much tougher situation. I just don't see it happening. For me, I'm going to use the 2 Pilot past performances. Pilot Commander, who I think is interesting. I'll use that horse. But I remember at some point screaming at the top of my lungs that Raging Torrent was going to win the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and that didn't happen. But I think he is sensational. I think he's great going 7 furlongs. I think it's a home game for Doug O'Neill. I think he's drawn perfectly outside of everything inside of him. I absolutely love Raging Torrent in here, and I'll just use the 2 and the 8 as A's, and I'll use Imagination as a B horse.
Let me just ask you one question about Raging Torrent. I could see that so much more if he'd ever properly stalked and won. I was worried that Ben Tornado having a gun down at the rail would spell doom potentially for Raging Torrent. You think he can sit, or you think he's fast enough, he'll just go and take the lead from Ben Tornado?
I would hate him. I would hate his situation if the post positions were switched. But he's going to pop from the outside. He's going to have a long run to the first turn to just get comfortable and relax a little bit. And you got Frankie on him, who if you get to pick somebody to make a good decision and drop his hands, let him get comfortable, not fight with him, then that's fine. And he's going to be able to put pressure on Ben Tornado. I don't see a situation in which he's going to get into a knockdown, drag out duel.
Let's move on to race number 9, the grade 2 Mathis Mile. JK, we'll keep it with you.
Yeah, like I said, a couple of singles. I would consider the Mystic Dan kind of an anti-single. The toss opinion there. I'm going to spread in here. I mean, look, I think that this is a situation where 1, 5 are the likely winners. I'm going to use those 2, but I see a lot of value being offered with the 8 and the 9. The 8, I don't know what we call it, Cathal, closing into a slow pace, a couple of starts back. The 9, Lord Bullington, also coming in off a long layoff. And Michael McCarthy's one of those horses that, in my trainers and in my brain, I'll add 5 or 6 points to his horses because I just think he's that good and he gets horses to improve. And if you add some points, how do they fit? I'll just be kind of holding my breath here to stay alive, crossing my fingers that I don't get a favorite to not pick up a lot of equity. But I can't not use the 8 and the 9 as A's. And I can't just single the 1 and the 5. This is going to kind of be a hold your breath type of leg for me.
I will, in the picks that I put down for our In the Money Plus people, I'll list the 8 and the 9 above the 1 and the 5. I assume that's how you see it. I mean, they're just going to be offering so much more in terms of price and presumptively value from the fact that you're including them as A's.
All good. Yep.
You're okay with that? You mentioned the one I like the best. I just thought Stay Hot finds himself in a really good situation in this spot. I think there'll be enough pace up front. I mean, that is a legitimate question, but I'm hoping King of Gosford isn't just able to walk up there. And I just like the figures and form that Stay Hot brings to the table. Another Southern California turfer who I'm banking on to get it done on the big stage, but it is a home game, and that's how I saw it. I just felt like his late closing kick might prove too much for the rest of this field. Again, I'll have a full write-up of this race. I probably will ultimately put some backups in, but I did want to go with Stay Hot in the Mathis Mile. How about you, Matt? Who's your idea of the winner?
Stay Hot. I'm with you. I think his losses this year, you can explain most of them. I think it's a combination of being pace compromised, which could be a little bit of a bugaboo in this spot as well. But also, I'm not convinced that 9 is really his preferred trip. I like this little turn back to 8. And I don't know if the morning line is going to be, lock, stock, and barrel. But if you told me 6-5 on the 1 versus 7-2 on the 5, even if you did like the 1, if that was your preference a little bit, they're not that far apart as far as the likelihood of winning. So I wish we were in a jurisdiction where you could lock in a number and set it and forget it. But Stay Hot at 7-2, anything close to that, I think would be a fantastic value. And I don't disagree with Jonathan. I don't think it's quite as simple as just those two and then everyone else. It's not like you've got horses in here that are running giant numbers, but I do think the consistency that Stay Hot brings to the equation, the cut back to the mile, and the success at Santa Anita, it all leads me in that direction. I understand Fresu's not aboard. You pick up Hernandez. I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. So it's 5 for me as well.
Interesting. And you make a great point. If those morning lines were reversed, would my opinion be reversed? Probably. Maybe I'm giving too much morning line credence in my ultimate opinion. I probably should list the 1 at least as a backup in there. We'll see how they bet it, but I'm totally with you. Too much difference between those prices if the morning line is correct. More grade 1 action. The La Brea 3-year-old fillies, last time for them to try to get that valuable grade 1 black type against their own sex, restricted to their own generation. That brings them out of the woodwork in this one. Talented field of 11. Matt, I will throw the ball back in your court to get a selection in the La Brea.
This is probably the race that I would like to do more work on, because I think on paper, just looking at the 10, it's awesome. I think you can make a case for many of them just on the raw numbers. So the tape kind of ends up being the separator. I say 10, there's 11 of them. I like the 11, Cavallari. I don't know what she looks like on tape, but the 2 wins, I think, are both solid. She defeated Accuracy in the debut. Accuracy has turned into something pretty good from McCarthy. I guess my concern for Accuracy in this spot would be what happens when she doesn't make the front, because I don't think she's fast enough to make the front in this race. And if she is, she's going to have to go a heck of a lot harder than maybe she has in either of these last 2. I know the raw times would indicate she's gone quick, but I don't really care about the raw time. I think she's going to have to work a lot harder if she's going to establish that early lead. And if she doesn't, does she quite kick the same way that she has? Cavallari, you could make the same argument for, and she's slower on numbers, but I'm going to make up for that with the likely off odds. So 10-1 on the outside runner. I think she ends up taking up that kind of 3-4 wide trip going into the far turn. And, maybe that's her undoing, taking on better horses off this kind of a layoff X, Y, and Z. But of the Baffert contingent and the entire lot, if I can get anything close to the 10, I like the 11.
11, and should I mention the 2 and the stuff that I send around to our plus friends as well, or is that more of a deeper backup?
No, it's so hard for me, because if you could tell me that she would be 5, yeah, I would probably be intrigued by that. I think the 107 sticks out like a sore thumb. I would like to think that people are just going to bang that and say, well, she's the most likely winner by a long shot. In that case, I'd probably be against her. This to me is always one of those races that it's the horses that are on the way up that end up popping, as opposed to those ones that have got the established form and this, that, and the other with all the figs. I would even like to take a longer look at a horse like Splendora down on the inside for Baffert, but she's got big speed too, so maybe she gets hooked early on. Throw the 2 in there for second, but it's not a strong push. I would much prefer the 11.
No, that's a clear top pick for you in there. Absent from your analysis, also absent from my picks that I was going to give, and I'm going to talk about three real quick in here when it gets to be my turn, was the presumptive favorite in Hope Road. JK, I want to throw to you, a man who's been known to break out a silver wig a time or two, with 4 Baffert runners in here. What do you think of Hope Road and the rest of them, and who are your picks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to use Hope Road as a B horse. She doesn't really get me going. She feels like a horse that, I don't know. She's going to be a little bit over bet, and her numbers don't really stand out. I'll use her as a B, but don't get me wrong. I still got the silver wig on. I mean, I love Kinza in here. Kinza's one that on debut, depending on what figures you look at, Timeform US is in the mix, but her debut this time last year as a 2-year-old is almost as fast as what everything else in here has run. Now, Baffert obviously knows how to get her ready to run first time out. She won by 7. He basically knows how to get anything with 4 legs ready to run first time out. So I'm not worried about the 264-day layoff. That's not a problem for me. I also think that if you take into account how much she's grown up between late 2-year-old in a maiden race and the figure she earned there to now, I mean, she's going to be significantly stronger, significantly faster. She'll be my top choice. I'll use the 2 accuracy as well. It's that Michael McCarthy effect. 1 Magic Philly, the 7, I thought was one I wanted to keep. And like, I'm not letting Tamara beat me as a B horse. I'll use the 10 as a B horse. Look, I mean, I thought she couldn't lose that juvenile fillies. Now, obviously, that's who she was facing. She didn't run well, but there was a lot of buzz that she wasn't going to run well. She had the comeback race for Richard Mandela. Do I think that he had her on a 378-day break, a Bolt Doro, daughter of Beholder, cranked, ready to run her best possible race of her life on November 15th in that 6 furlong race? No, that was clearly a prep for this. She's going to run better. She's going to have to run better. I'll use her as a B. So 3, 2, 7 is A's and 9, 10 is B.
You mentioned 2 of my A's, and you made a good case there for Tamara. I mean, but you talked about that figure improvement for age angle. You go back to that race in the debutante that got us so excited, thinking she was going to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies before, as you said, the vibes that week where that something was up, and the fact that she was as big of a price as 4 to 5 was, but believe it or not, 4 to 5 was dead on the board there for Tamara, and she ran like it. I agree. In an old school barn like this, it was not a fast comebacker, but you know what? That's going to help the price on Tamara. There's a ton of speed in here. I think she should be able to sit. She's got a great post. Really like her. Not my top pick, though. 1 Magic Philly to me is the one that holds the cards as the top pick. Another runner whose last line I don't think indicates quite how good the race was. A lot of people have made hay about the trouble she had in the stretch. It's less that to me. Yeah, she was maybe short a run for a second there, but it was more just the dynamics. She was super close, and attacked a hot pace that went to a horse that was in another parish early on in terms of Soul of an Angel. Now you get a closer-friendly spot. Maybe she can sit a little more. I trust Pratt to pull the strings correctly, but I'm going to give you a goofy one too. There is a world in which even those horses like 1 Magic Philly and Tamara attack too early, and this thing ends up in a meltdown. I don't mind Sugarfish as a horse to come running and pick up some pieces, whether that's underneath in verticals or maybe, just maybe, if this thing goes ridiculously supersonic up front, has the ability to get there, has won over the course and distance. I don't think the 7 is too sharp in a meltdown scenario. That'll bring her stamina into play. She's 10 to 1 on the morning line. I think she might be more like a name your price situation. I think she might even get better than that. An interesting one to maybe throw in your horizontals and play around with in verticals for me. The 4, Sugarfish. I like it 7, 10, and 4. Great running of the La Brea. One more grade 1 to talk about. It's the American Oaks for these 3-year-old fillies, going 1.25 miles. When it comes to this all stakes $2 pick 6 on opening day at Santa Anita, JK, how are we going to get paid?
Well, Pete, most people don't know that I have this club in my bag, but secret is patience.
Patience.
That's Ralph Waldo Emerson, if you're wondering. And no, I didn't have to Google that. She feels
if you had JK quotes Emerson on a ticket at 7 billion to 1, go to the window and cash.
Look, I mean, to pass up the way that she ran at Keeneland, to pass up the temptation to run her in the Breeders' Cup. The fact that they did that, the racing gods will not let her lose. She is so good. She's gotten so good. If I'm alive to her, I'm gonna I don't know, fist pump at this 8th pole. Like she's gonna win this race. She's the best horse in here, and I think she's gonna have an outstanding year. And it's not that I don't believe Chad will find one, but his Diana run, he better bring a good one, because she looks like she could be any kind for the rest of her career.
She looks awesome. She's in my picks. I have two slight concerns. One, I don't think there's going to be 7-5 about her. I think she'll be half that. And my other concern is just, look, the result of the QE2 suggests I was just wrong questioning her ability to go beyond a mile. But I'm not sure I want my absolute everything on the day keyed to her now going farther at the minuscule price she's going to be. So another one like Johannes on every single ticket. But I wanted a little bit of, I wanted one other horse. And for me, that one other horse is the 4, Catherine Marissa, who I think should get an absolutely great trip in this spot, is behind She Feels Pretty, but not that far behind, and not far behind any of She Feels Pretty's races other than that QE2. Yeah, she might be 5-2, 3-1, which would, mean I'd really be chalking out here in the last, but I needed 2 numbers on my tickets. And I, for the record, wrote it down 4 and 8 in the American Oaks.
Before we go to Matt, let me just give you the reason. Let me answer your concern about the distance.
Yeah.
I think that
it's not really a concern. It's just a thing stuck in the back of my head.
Well, look, I'm going to try to pry it out.
It's a reason to not take 1-2. That it's not really.
I'm going to try to pry it out a little bit. The reason that you had the question, the reason that got stuck in your brain is because she kept hanging in races where she looked like she was going to run by horses. She added the blinkers last time, and it solved the problem. The problem wasn't the distance. The problem was her not focusing and finishing her races. Why she was laying all over that filly that Flavian won with at Saratoga, the gray filly that he won with up the rail, while she was lugging in like a psychopath. And I saw Cherie after that race, and she told, I'm going to put blinkers on her. She put blinkers on her, and she got her lifetime best performance out of her in a 1 1/8 race at Keeneland.
It's also the blood, Caraconte more than ready to me says that sometimes that difference between a 1 1/8 and a 1 1/4. Look, I think she's terrific. She's on every ticket, but at 1-2, do I want to have a bad day if one is logical as Catherine Marissa wins instead of her? No, I do not want to have a bad day. And let's bring Matt in to sort of it's not even break the tie, but to go one way or another. I mean, is this a layup for She Feels Pretty?
No, it's not a layup. She's clearly the likeliest winner. It's not a layup. I agree with everything Jonathan said. I was there that day when she won the QE2. That was the single best performance of the fall. There was no 2 ways around it. The way that she finished you can't help but think it was just purely the blinkers. I said right after that if they ran her in the mile, granted the mile might be a little bit on the sharp side for her, I thought she would have fit in there. Now, granted, Cherie went and won it with the other horse, but neither here nor there. Point being, I thought that was a breakthrough performance. Pete, I'm kind of with you. I don't feel like it's a guarantee that 10 is in her wheelhouse. Then again, they're starting down the hill, so maybe it's closer to 9.5. Maybe that kind of mitigates it a little bit. But Kathy and Marissa, I don't mind her. I saw her at Kentucky Downs. She's fine. You brought up the bigger thing, Pete. One, the pace. There's not a ton of burners in here. There are a couple of horses that'll go. Chattelis will go. I don't think she's good enough. But beyond that, Rashmi, the 13, who's cross-entered or is also entered in a race the day after opening day. I don't even know what it is. This is a horse for Jonathan Thomas that has just kind of come into her own over the last 4. I wouldn't totally draw a line through her. And Jonathan Thomas, if I'm not mistaken, was winning everything out of Del Mar. So, good things possibly at a good number with Rashmi. The only other thing I'd throw out there for She Feels Pretty, and I don't know, again, I've been basically in a bit of a hole for the past 2 months. I don't know what the weather was like in Kentucky between November 25th and December 8th. I don't like a gap like that, this close to a race like this. And I know she ended up coming right back with that 46 and change and then worked out at Santa Anita. But just because you're much better than everyone doesn't mean you can kind of show up with your 90% game in a race like this. It's a full field of 13. She didn't scare anybody away. I would have reservations about taking too short a number on her. Now, as far as the pick goes, she'd probably be a lone A, but I'm with you guys. I don't know that I'm rushing to bet her at 3 to 5 or 4 to 5 in a spot like this. She's probably going to win. On the win end, I don't know that you're going to get a fair price on her.
And I may be wrong about her being long odds on. That was just my read. I mean,
I'm kind of with you.
If it was the prices are the prices, there's enough built in to 7 to 5 to just go a little bit more confidently that way. Be interesting to see what they do with Rashmi in the spot. Very talented, brutal draw, tricky situation. I do think there might be some cheaper speed to keep her honest, but I'm not going to talk anybody off. Jonathan Thomas and Rosario at double-digit odds. Well, guys, we ran way over the time I told you because I was having too much fun talking to you, but really appreciate having you on, celebrating 10 years of podcasting for the longest continuously running podcast brand, the Players Podcast. I'll throw it back to you because this is a holiday show. It is a 10th anniversary show. I'll throw it back to you each one time for a quick closing thought. Matt, we'll start with you so I don't get JK stuck on mute.
No, all I'm going to say is I hope everybody enjoys the holiday. Pete, I'm glad everything's going well with you. Jonathan, you as well. Be safe. Don't do anything stupid over the next few days. Go out there, have fun, but don't have too much fun. And then hopefully we see everybody out on the road here in a few weeks.
We're going to sit in the sweet spot of fun. That's what we do, right, JK?
Yeah. Well, most of the time. I'm about to eat a lot of good food for the next couple of days. I'm newly Italian, so the Feast of the Seven Fishes is going down tomorrow, and they hold no punches over here. I mean, it's 7. It could be 12, maybe. And then we're back on the sauce on Sunday. So I'm on Christmas Day. And when I say sauce, I don't mean alcohol. I mean I do mean alcohol, but I mean actually sauce.
Yeah, you'll be drunk for the Feast of the Fishes for sure. You mean the Sunday sauce.
Yeah,
I'm going to
be both of them probably.
I'll be making some of that as well. You're going to be eating well. We've welcomed you to the Italian fold. You and Franco Harris, we love you equally. All right, if you're listening, we've got more show coming up because we've got Mike Maloney on the audio side. If you're watching on the video side, drop in the comments who you like. And let us know where we're right, where we're wrong in terms of these races. Make sure to subscribe while you're here. We definitely want to hear from you in that forum. And we'll be back very, very soon. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And if you're on audio, we'll be back right after this.